Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of 2020. Happy New Year. This is actually episode 25 of The Badass and the Buddha, where we get together once a week, with the exception of last week during the holidays, to talk about topics that we think are relevant and that most of us will probably have to deal with at some point in our lives. My name is Annie Fonte. I'm the Badass.
And I'm Alexis Williams, the Buddha.
So today, Alexis and I were chatting, and we decided this would be a good time for us to have a conversation about intention with integrity. And so what do we mean by that? We were talking about that a little bit before we popped on here. And what it means is, I think a lot of us find ourselves this time of year sitting down, and I think this is a great practice, and I think it's a great discipline, and you make New Year's resolutions or you set goals for yourself for the year or the first quarter. That's beautiful. However, my observation is, let's say your intention is you're going to start working out, and you go to the gym and there's not a parking space available and all the machines are taken and it's crowded and it's January 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and then come March 1st, you go, parking lot's completely empty. Maybe your car isn't even there. The gym, no one's on the machine. It's crickets, right? So what happened? What happened between getting all jacked up on January 1st and March 1st when people aren't showing up? I really feel one of the things we consider and to think about is people's intentions were good, but what was lacking in this situation was their integrity around that intention. So, Alexis, you mentioned when we were talking a second ago is the importance of a why when you have an intention. So talk to us a little bit about what you're meaning when you said that.
Okay. Yeah. So often what we're looking for is a feeling or how we want to be and feel in the future. We have this future image of ourselves.
Right.
And then there gets into the doing. So if we're not connected to that already, like how we want to be in the world, it can look more like a to-do thing. And then we set ourselves up for failure. Annie, can ask me, was that exactly what you were asking?
Well, yeah, you were saying that a person who has a certain physique has that because they honor that they're going to eat clean and they're going to limit their drinking, and that's right. Why they do. That's their why, is because that's who they are in the world, the space they hold for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So carry on.
Okay, yeah. So the who you want to be. So these are all details around that image of that person, your ideal person who you want to be. So instead of getting fixated on to the new shift in pattern and habit, because that's always hard, no matter what, when we're trying to change our neurons and change patterns, that's just plain what it is. We have to work at that. But if we can have the vision and actually start embodying who that person is now in this moment, then through that lens is how we can make choices, and it won't seem so much like a resistance. That's what we're looking for, is what we resist persists and also creates the suffering.
Yeah.
So
and then we were talking about the age-old question that women all across America have probably asked their husband or boyfriend or significant other at some point in their life, honey, does this dress make me look fat? And we were talking about, most of the time, you don't need to ask that question because you already know the answer to that question. I think what happens is there's a disconnect between our already knowing and seeking approval outside of ourselves, hoping they're going to tell us what we want to hear versus what we know is already true. Does that make sense?
I totally did that, you guys. I have like a big bottom sometimes. It's like, oh my God, do I look fat?
So it's like, okay, you know you have a big ass. So why are you going to ask your husband if the pants you're wearing makes your ass look big? Of course it's going to make your ass look big because you have a big ass. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but don't cause a dust up that's unnecessary, and also one that you create because you're not willing to take responsibility for your current situation. Now that's just an example, but I think it's a pretty good example, right?
Yeah.
Of, okay, if, like I was saying to Alexis, if one has to ask, do you think I drink too much? Or do you think I'm too heavy? Or do you think I should work out more? Or do you think I should be more social? If you have to ask those questions, you probably already know the answer to all of those is yes, right?
Absolutely.
And so instead of looking for approval outside of yourself and going to, quote, the weak link in your relationships that you know is not going to answer that question to cause any kind of rift with you, between the two of you, just ask yourself the question and be honest with yourself. And that's where the integrity comes in. You already know the answer to those questions, right?
Yeah, and what's crossing my mind now is I can tend to want things and I want them now and I want them fast. And then when it's not happening, I can get frustrated. So what I think is another thing that we can learn through this goal setting is it's the long view,
Right.
and it's in the small moments that we can nurture ourselves in other ways that support us so that we're fortified to stay the course is the whole point. We can have friends as support, but even if you just want to rely on yourself, just take the time to get really clear each moment, seeing what you really need. If it's a food thing, just sometimes the food is the opt out, just a way to, mood alter.
Right.
So you can kind of check in like, oh gosh, really don't want to eat. I'm actually sort of bored. And then find what you could do to, get outside, go for a walk, do something else. It's all about getting conscious.
Yes.
And then also having that long view for your best lived self. And then also embodying that person now. Feel the inspiration in this moment as you were that person,
Right.
and just start feeling those feelings.
Act as if.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
Well, and I think too, weight loss is always a big New Year's resolution. It has been for years, and it probably will be for years to come. Unfortunately, I heard a really sad statistic the other day when I was driving, that by the year 2025, over 60% of our population here in the United States will be clinically obese. That's pretty sad, isn't it? But that is huge, right? But instead of a goal being, consider this, instead of your goal being, I am going to lose 20 pounds, probably a more achievable goal, a more embraceable goal is, I'm going to lose a pound this week. And then you have success at the end of the week. Go, okay. And then that's inspiring and that's encouraging for you to say, okay, did a pound last week, good for me, celebrate. Now I'm going to lose another pound this week. And so 1 pound at a time, you get to your 20. And 20 weeks, then you start to develop really good eating behaviors and really good exercise behaviors that help you maintain that over the long haul, like you just talked about, versus going on a trendy diet or a liquid diet and you lose your 20 pounds in a month. And then 6 months later, you've gained your 20 pounds back, plus an additional 10, because you didn't go through the process of allowing your body to conform to the changes you were making slowly. You did it so quickly, and then your body kind of shut down and resisted all this quick weight loss. And so it caused more challenges for you than it did you good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I know for myself, it's just really an act of learning humility, because sometimes
Yes.
it just is one day at a time.
Yes.
There's no getting around it.
Right.
So sometimes I just have to be humble and just realize, hey, you know what? This is the best I can do today, and that's all there is to it.
Yes.
And there's nothing more I can do.
You have to give yourself grace. You have to be gracious with yourself first and foremost, and don't beat yourself up. Yes, are you going to fall off the wagon now and then? Are you going to make a mistake or trip up? Yeah, you will. That's human nature. That's going to happen. It doesn't have to be the momentum that just you throw your hands in the air and say, oh, well, screw it. Forget it. I'm not going to do that anymore. It's just recognizing that in the moment, giving yourself forgiveness, having a little pep talk with you, Inc., and getting back on track again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that circles back around to me always. The whole thing is just check in and see what you're really, really wanting and needing. Then it gets so simple because it's so clear.
Right.
You're not trying to satisfy through all the distractions.
Right.
And it's so real, so that you're not in self-resistance.
Yes, and it allows you to get in touch with yourself. It allows you to act from a place of authenticity, and you're doing things from the inside out versus the outside in. You're not doing things to please others. You're doing things for yourself. I think that's an important distinction too, because oftentimes I think we either compare ourselves to others, or we say, oh, my boyfriend or husband wants me to do X, or oh, my boss wants me to do X, and so that's your reason for doing it. When if you don't have that commitment to yourself as a reason for doing it, those things probably aren't going to last over the long haul, like we talked about. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's an exercise, or what's something we can give our listeners and our viewers to do for this week to kind of really embrace this intention with integrity? What can we do?
Well, I think what you said is important. If you do things in small chunks, the way that works, you get the dopamine reward. So just the physiology, you're just going to feel better.
Right.
So like what Annie said, when you do it, even if you make it through that day and you ate perfect, just write that down. I had a great day, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're just going to get that physiology going in your paper with dopamine, so you can stay the long haul. And then, so write it down. Another one is just always check in, see what's really up before you get into a distraction or get off course, because the answer will be there, and then you can self-correct.
Right. And really, I've been doing this now for the past 93 days, because I started the 4th quarter challenge in 2019. So I went through the last 90 days and did an exercise. Some of you joined me in on that. And writing it down. And I find that I am declarations are very powerful. And you may not be that yet, but if you continue to declare it, like we talked about a little earlier in our conversation here, I am healthy, I am fit, I am wealthy, I am smart, I am whatever it is that you're striving to be. Write that down every day and step into that space every day and imagine yourself already being your ideal I am, and act appropriately, make choices that will get you there. Because it's amazing over time, if you stay focused and you really check in with yourself deeply. Deep listening is what Alexis talks about often. Listen deeply to yourself, and then those days add up, and then before you know it, 90 more days are gone and you're beautiful. You've been working out, you've changed your eating habits, you've inspired others to do the same thing, your relationships have gotten better, you feel much better about yourself. So it's a snowball effect. Those things really start to stack on top of one another, and it's amazing what you'll see and feel and experience as a result. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. We'll see you next week. But this week,
I won't be here.
Oh, Alexis, that's right.
I won't be here.
Speaking of getting quiet and going inside, Alexis, tell us about what you're doing next week.
Okay. So every year I go to a silent retreat. It's a silent meditation retreat. And this one's five days long. So we sit in silence for 5 days, and that's what I do every year. So I won't be here next week. I'll be there.
I will be here, not being
she'll
silent
be there.
with you.
She'll fill you in.
But this is, and I'm looking forward to when Alexis comes back. We'll debrief her on her experience, because that's probably, I would guess, I don't know about you, Alexis, it's not so hard for you because you're more practiced at it, but I would guess it's probably one of the most challenging things a human asks of themselves, is to go into that silent retreat. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day, that can be really challenging. So maybe you'll have some tips for us when you get back.
All right.
All right. So you guys have a kick-ass week.
Yeah.
Get intentional with integrity this week. And I will see you next week without our little Buddha friend here, but the following week she'll be back and we'll talk about her experience in her 5-day retreat. And until then, have a great weekend. Take good care of yourself. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.